We've all been there. You love a series, and no matter how much we beg, Nintendo just refuses to give us a new entry. Thankfully, we've got indies like Bug Fables for our Paper Mario fix, Wargroove since Nintendo refuses to release Advance Wars, The Wild at Heart for you Pikmin fans, and this week we can add another type of entry to that list. If you want to know what it is, you're in the right place because this is Nindie Nation episode 153. Greetings, citizens! I'm Jeff, and today we've got 13 brand new indie games to check out, all of which are heading to the Nintendo eShop through July 31st. We'll also be playing a couple of this week's new releases live, so join us this Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern for our Nindies at Night stream. And tell me down in the comments, on Twitter, or over on Discord what you'd like to see. Over on the YouTube community page this week, I asked you about covering the neglected Nindies, and your responses were clear and mirrored exactly what I was thinking. Going forward, we'll still cover every game we missed, but we're gonna gloss over the obvious trash from scam artists like Kistler, Boom Hits, Winterworks, and the like, so that the episodes don't always have to start with a bunch of negativity. So thanks for your feedback. And now, it's time, citizens. So before we check out the week's new releases, let's kick off episode 153 of Nindie Nation by taking a look at the 2 neglected Nindies that released since episode 152. First up is a title by Terrain Games, published by Regista and Moonglass, that appears to be named after what happens when I eat way too much Taco Bell. Raging Blasters is a vertical shmup with a cool sci-fi anime vibe that supports local co-op and a handful of different modes. It released for $14.70 and looks like a pretty fun time. And fans of games like F-Zero and Wipeout take note, because 34 Big Things is back with Redux 2, the sequel to their well-received original, this time published by Saber Interactive for $29.99. While I personally prefer Fast RMX, Redux was great and definitely captures the feel of its inspirations. The latest entry is receiving very similar positive reviews, with almost every review I could find stating that the only thing really holding it back is just how difficult it is. Which tells me that it'd be great for fans specifically of F-Zero GX for the GameCube. And I know there's a lot of you out there. And now we get to the part where I get to tell you about all of last week's shovelware as quickly as possible. Here are your Nindie Nevers. The latest kick in the eShop's crotch, Scourge of the Earth publisher Cooking and Publishing, is responsible for Encounters Music Stories. No idea what's going on here. Polygraph, Escape from the Lie Detector, where you stare at royalty-free clip art, so that's fun. And Tiki Party, quiz game with your friends, which includes a screenshot of the question,
describe the biggest blow you have ever had to yourself.
Not sure what to make of that, but I think I need a shower. Boom released Construction Ramp Jumping. Ocean Media wants you to find stuff inside of gaudy artwork in Faircroft's Antiques, The Mountaineer's Legacy. And Kistler Studios just said f it, grabbed a few puzzle games off the App Store, and made a potato salad of dog shit with 9-in-1 puzzles. And speaking of not doing things just because you technically can, Console Labs is a weird name for a publisher that just charges money for free mobile games. This week's example being Animal Rivals Up in the Air. And then Winterworks takes the cake this week with a free app they've already released a dozen times, each time charging $8. Animal Puzzle for toddlers and kids, preschool and kindergarten learning and fun game. But don't be dismayed, citizens. Redux 2 is exactly what you're looking for if you wish Nintendo would stop dilly-dallying and just release a new F-Zero already. Plus, Raging Blasters likely deserves a spot on the wishlist of most shoot-'em-up fans. But with that out of the way, citizens, let's get into the week ahead. These are the 13 new releases hitting the Nintendo Switch through Sunday, July 31st. Most of this week's new games release on Thursday, but we do have 3 that start the weekly warm-up on Wednesday. Nape Games, a Spanish developer with a lot of experience on the Switch, are mostly known for their Ploid series. But this week, they kick off a new branch of the series with Gimma Boy Zero Origins. Like Ploid, it's a 2D platformer clearly inspired by Mega Man. But this game leans into that inspiration even further with lots of design elements, boss fights, and upgradable weapons. It actually seems like their most ambitious game to date. My criticism of their games have always been that there's just too much empty space, as if they could probably cut out half of each level and only be better for it. But either way, it launches for the quite clever price of $12.34, and while their games have never hit home for me, I'm rooting for you, Nape. Keep it up. Hey, you know what's cool? Retro run-and gunners. You know what else is cool? Flamethrowers. So are grenade launchers, and jetpacks, always jetpacks. And Omega Core agrees, because they've thrown all of those things together in this week's Arsonist Heaven, releasing for $4.99 by way of the dynamic duo of Ratalaika and East Asia Soft. I'm not sure why this game requires 2 publishers, but hey, flamethrowers and jetpacks, there's gotta be some fun to be had here. Alright, conductors, this next one's for you. Well, what is a snarky name you would call someone who loves trains? Is there one? Like, if you were giving a pilot a hard time, you might call him Flyboy? I guess you could call a conductor a railboy? No, that doesn't sound right. Train Valley Console Edition is being ported to the Switch by publisher Blitworks for $11.99 and is a train/city building sim developed by Flasm, who has, frankly, made a lot of mobile jank, but has seemed to find a home with their 2 Train Valley titles as well as the recent release of Time Loader. I still want to play that one. So if you take 1 part Mini Metro, 1 part Roller Coaster Tycoon, and 1 part Sim City, that's pretty much what you're getting here. You gotta be a real special kind of nerd to fit this mold, but if you do, the reviews suggest that you're in for a great time. Thursday has all kinds of great stuff in store for us, so let's start with one that is probably the most anticipated. Azure Striker Gunvolt 3 is the latest release by Japanese retro powerhouse Inti Creates, and if you enjoy the Mega Man games, especially Mega Man Zero, this one's right up your alley. These games are the epitome of anime superhero nonsense, laced with a bunch of awesome sci-fi tropes, tight gameplay, a killer soundtrack, and a story that takes itself way too seriously. It's fast-paced action that skews more towards melee than projectiles, and it's all about getting up close and personal, moving quick, and speccing out your characters to play exactly how you want. As with any other NT release, there's a boatload of content, including entirely new modes to play and a new game plus. If you've never played this series, consider giving it a shot. I bet the older titles are going to be on sale this week. And if you have played them, you're probably already throwing $26.99 at the eShop as fast as possible. And speaking of anime that takes itself way too seriously...
Podcasting.
And speaking of anime that takes itself way too seriously, we've covered a few of the Toho games on Nindie Nation, with Luna Nights being my favorite so far. Similar to Luna Nights, this week developer Frontier Aja revamps their 2009 Symphony of the Night clone with, Komajo Remelia Scarlet Symphony. Yeah, we're gonna call it Scarlet Symphony. One look at this game, and it couldn't be more obvious that this is a shameless clone of the classic Castlevania formula, with a bunch of assets looking a bit too close for coincidence. However, the original was well received, and with as much as I enjoyed Luna Nights, I've definitely got my eye on Scarlet Symphony. Something surprising about this one is that it's published by CFK, whose titles I've yet to try for myself, but I think this one might just win me over. I doubt I'll jump in at the $30 asking price, but the next time it's on sale, or I'm just really craving Symphony of the Night, I might turn here first.
Strange Horticulture is an occult puzzle game in which you play as the proprietor of a local plant store. Find and identify new plants, pet your cat, speak to a coven, or join a cult. Use your growing collection to influence the story and unravel Undermere's dark mysteries.
Hey, thanks Deep Dives! I don't know if it was you or your publisher Iceberg Interactive, but your provided description is actually detailed yet concise. While my tone here might sound sarcastic, I'm actually proud of these teams for their effective messaging, because that just means that other than stating that Strange Horticulture will cost you $14.99, they did my job for me. Cubite Interactive's chill puzzle game for the week is Puzzletronix Digital Infinite. For $3.99, you get a relaxing atmosphere to vibe to as you work out isometric puzzles based on computer and electronic schematics. More than just physics, this one actually involves the logic behind circuitry, and I think that's pretty neat. And in a similar style to last week's Wall-E and the Fantastic Predators, developer Isoka Games and Jandusoft have ported their year-old title Loot Light to the Switch for $4.99. That means that we can yet again share with you that this bad boy is a top-down dungeon crawler with procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! Naturally, being a $5 title, it implores a simpler art style, but includes 7 different character classes and local co-op. If it's a cheap, simple Nindie trifecta you're after this week, I think you've found your jam. Now, here at Nindie Nation, we cover a lot of games. And while we see a lot of variety, we see a lot of trends too. Just look at our last game for an example. There's nothing wrong with that, but it always brings me great pleasure to describe a game with elements that I don't often see, or maybe have never seen before. As such, this week, solo developer Scarlet Symphony, who goes by the studio name Cave Monsters, releases Lordwinklebottom Investigations. It's a point-and-click detective adventure set in the 1920s, following a duo comprised of a giraffe and a hippo. The game seems chock full of charm and British humor as you set out to track down a serial killer. It releases for $18.99 and looks like an excellent way to get a fun story, some clever puzzles, and at least a few chuckles. If any of you citizens are really deep into Japanese and anime culture, I'd love to know more about the premise of this next game. As far as I can tell, developer Momo and publisher Shueisha Games have decided to port the newest game in a series based on the Shonen Jump Plus, series? Franchise? I don't know. And I guess it's the first time those of us in the West are receiving an official English version of a well-regarded series. Captain Velvet Meteor, The Jump Plus Dimensions, is a grid-based strategy RPG about a boy who's just moved to Japan and finds comfort within his imagination. The artwork is interesting. It's got a lot of that cheap mobile game look to the assets, but they're used in a way that looks really nice and gives the game a unique style. It appears to be a pretty lighthearted plot, but with overly dramatic performances and stakes, like a kid would imagine. I don't know anything else about the teams behind this, or really the characters it's based off of, but I'll be watching reviews very closely, because it launches for $24.99, but if it proves to be worth it, I could really see myself enjoying this mix of campiness and fantasy. And oddly enough, the next game, at least in its trailer, seems to also be inspired by a child's imagination. Talking about trends here, see? Romeow to the Cracked Mars is one of those puzzle games that's seen a lot of popularity in the past few years. You know the sliding tiles that, when arranged properly, show a story or scenario play out? Like the Framed Collection or Bring You Home, which is probably the most recognizable in the genre? Well, that's what Romeow is, and it stars an adorable cat in a cartoony world that looks like a child's drawing. For $2.99, this little title by Remix Games and Silesia Games could be a great option to play with a young kid. Preferably your kid, or like the kid of a trusted friend or colleague. Not just some random kid, because that might be kidnapping, and kidnapping is illegal. For some reason, when I loaded up the page for Yuoni by Tricore and Chorus Worldwide, it immediately opened up the screenshots. At first, I was taken back by the historic Japanese environments soaked in sunset, but then I saw a freaky Slenderman creature, a door made of eyeballs, and a room of dirty childlike porcelain dolls. So, while I noped right the hell out of there, it seems like a lot of people have enjoyed this 4-hour game of hide-and-seek between you and a demon. If a 10-year-old girl being stalked by any of the horrific things I mentioned sounds like a good time to you can jump into Yuoni for $14.39. Oh, and before getting to our final game of the week, here's a few that are most likely going to be staying off your wish list. Solitaire Master Versus and Artsy Pixel by Ultimate Games are the latest examples of Please for the Love of God Stop Already. Thankfully, we get the fifth and final entry in Japanese escape games this week when Regista sends us to the hospital. Tell me down in the comments why their terrible games sent you to the hospital, and I'll pick one and send someone a code for a free game. I'm not promising it's a good game, just deal. And flaming pile of poop in hell, Batman. I can't tell if the premise or name is worse, but I can tell you that there is no reason to even consider picking up Jigoku Unko Toripuru. How much you want to bet that translates to flaming poop in hell? I think it might. And then back to our last new Nindie of the week, which comes to us by way of Made for Strings and Checkmate Publishing. Moonrise Fall drops for $9.99. It's an isometric game about exploration and puzzle solving that's received consistently positive reviews since its 2019 PC release. Yet, no matter how much I read about this game, it's still kinda hard to grasp exactly what you do, which I think is kinda the point. You're some sort of detective, and the whole thing has this surreal yet bittersweet vibe to it. It should take you about 8 hours to see it through to its conclusion, but there are quite a few Steam reviews that claim there's a lot more to find if you go back for more. So for $10, it seems like a pretty good deal to wrap up the week on Friday the 29th. It's another slow week for the eShop, but I think Arsonist Heaven, Azure Striker Gunvolt 3, Scarlet Symphony, and of course Loot Light all look like cheap fun Nindies. But if you're looking to work your brain a little more, there's always Strange Horticulture, Lordwinklebottom, and Moonrise Fall. So all in all, a pretty decent week. Let me know what you're picking up down in the comments, over on Twitter, or on Discord. And stop by this Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern for our Nindies at Night stream, where we'll check out whichever game from this week you want to see more of, as well as a sneak peek at X Zodiac, an indie take on Star Fox that just hit early access last week. Otherwise, that's it for this week, citizens. Thanks so much for watching, liking, and subscribing. If you happen to know anyone or be a part of another indie game community that you think would appreciate what we do here, sharing Nindie Nation with others is the best way you can help us grow. The next couple of weeks are looking stacked, with a brand new deck-building roguelike, a couple Metroidvanias, 2 Point Campus, and the long-awaited release of Blossom Tales 2. So I hope you join us for episode 154. Until then, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindie Nation episode 153. And remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindie Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.